Bienvenidos, herzlich willkommen, and welcome. This is probably one of the most fascinating dates that I'm going to be having at the beginning of this year, because as you remember, I promised you last year that we were going to be starting the session of interviews in English. And due to a couple of personal issues within our family and different things that happened around the world, we are starting about a month late, but we kind of did some family talking and decided to start with the best person that should have started anyways from the beginning. I'm about to introduce you to her. Gabi, my sister, was going to be the person that was going to be doing the last interview to close our series in Spanish last year. And as Christmas came around and we got busy within the family and other things, we decided to postpone Gabi closing our Spanish cycle and having her inaugurate our English cycle, which I guess I'm going to say very proudly is now actually worldwide. So without further ado, let me tell you something about my sister Gabi. And if we end up crying or something a little bit during this interview, it's going to be out of proud, because I love my sister very, very much. I'm very proud of her. She says I'm good with words, which I am, but at the same time, I'm also very honest. And many of you may or may not know our mother passed away a week and 2-3 days ago. So ironically, this whole thing about timing and waiting, etc., worked out perfectly. So today, being International Women's Day, this month being International Women's Month, my sister Gabi is about to kick off our international English interviews, heading off a long list of very, very interesting women, including 3 of our German consuls in Mexico, including Secretary of Economy, Tatiana Cloutier, which we will be having at the consulate visiting in the near future, and we hope to be able to arrange an interview with her, justly dealing with leadership from a woman's perspective. Now, as you know, I talk a lot, so let me stop here and introduce you to Gabi Eisele, which is my dear sister. Gabi comes from the University of Houston, Hilton School of Hotel and Restaurant Management, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure she's gonna correct me on that as soon as I finalize introducing you to her. And through the magic of technology, I'm sitting here and she's 2 meters away, so I'm going to turn around and say, "Hi, Gabi." We talked a little bit before starting, so as always, I wanted to start with Gabi maybe telling us a little bit about her and something she finds important that that we should know about her. All yours.
Well, good morning.
See, that's what we were talking. I have 2 assistants here too, and they told me, Fritz, when you're done, please turn off your mic. And oh well, there we go.
Well, good morning to all. Here we go. There we go. No? No. Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. We decided that we were not going to make any cuts.
Well, once again, good morning to all, and I am very honored to be able to be here today with the importance of obviously the day. where we're celebrating the female gender for the month, as Fritz mentioned, and to be able to be obviously the first in line is a great honor, and I thank my brother for that. And it has a special importance. I mean, with what Fritz mentioned, what we just recently experienced with my mom passing away, obviously her influence on me over the many years brought me to all that I did and where I'm at today, and I think that's also very important. So basically, I mean, a lot of, I think in the end, to what I did over my professional part of my life has much to do also with my personal part. So I was born into a family with three gentlemen, my three brothers, Fritz being the youngest, and then Mike and Peter older than me. And I think that brought me and did some formation into my character. I will always say fortunate, because I obviously was, I think from my dad's side, always the one that was well taken care of, because I was the only girl. But I think the fact of growing up with brothers, more obviously the elder ones, Peter and Mike, I mean, you do learn to sort of defend yourself. And I think it starts building into your character, and knowing that you do have to maybe step up a little bit more. It'll come around when we talk again about gender difference, but I do think that has a lot to do in what formed me. The fact of being the only girl with three guys is also something that makes you push towards achieving something in life. Not only just prove it to yourself, but obviously to your parents. And even though we lost our dad for me, it was a young age. For it's obviously much younger at that time. But I was not even ready to start my formal schooling in college. I think that made me obviously work harder towards getting to where I wanted to, as far as my schooling. And then with professional part, I mean, I basically wanted always to make use of my languages and the experience we had of being a family with influence of basically three cultures. We grew up at home with speaking German, and obviously with my parents being the ones that formed us. We went to an American school, so there was a lot of American English interaction, and obviously a large group of our friends were always Mexican, local. So I always thought that, the fact of the world, and, at that time, which is quite a few years ago, obviously the hospitality industry was something that really brought my attention. And with that, I started studying, and what Fritz said, I graduated from the Hotel and Restaurant Management School, Hilton, and basically was fortunate enough, once I finished my career, to be selected by Hyatt at that time to do management training program, and was whisked away to Cancun, which is where I started my professional career. I was fortunately again able to begin really with a formal job at a very short period. And with that, I mean, as the hospitality industry works, it's moved around. A highlight maybe for me was being able to participate in the opening of the first Hyatt hotel in Germany, and which again, confirmed that being able to have language opens up many doors. And after that, it was moving around always 3 years, different places, different locations. And obviously, a big part of my professional life was in Cozumel, where I was able to work for Menia and then afterwards for the Presidente Intercontinental in Cozumel. And basically, from then, different positions. My last position and last work experience was here in Monterey with Millennium Grupo Hotelero, and with various positions always. And here towards the end, almost 14 years as general manager.
If I may interject, two questions. When you mentioned growing up within the family with the brothers and father, do you think tenacity or leadership, is that made or learned? I would have thought that I consider you someone very strong, very stoic, not unemotional at all, but you manage emotional intelligence very well. Certainly much better than any of us three brothers. Is that because you were born that way, do you think? Or again, was it growing up within the guys that helped for that?
I think you learn it.
You learn it.
I do think. I think that you're formed, some at a younger age, some later on, but I think that those factors definitely influence.
They influence, okay. Having said that though, perhaps a young lady growing up with three ladies, for example, also has the capability of learning to have that emotional intelligence. I would hope, I would presume.
I think so. I mean, that it does make it such a big difference, but I think it does influence you in a different way.
Okay. And the other question is actually more a comment hidden. It's not actually a question, but one of the many valuable things I've learned from my sister is she has her feet on the ground. She's a pretty no frills, transparent, what you see is what you get kind of person. She has never, ever since I known her, had the need to show off or the external thing. She's just what you see is what you get, and in that spirit, as you just noticed, she starts describing her career and where she came from, etc. I guess I'm not going to ask her to describe the different positions she was in. I'm going to let you know a little bit myself where she was, because it's actually admirable, and that'll give us the foot to enter into the different questions about her experience as a leader, as a female leader within the hospitality industry. Yeah, as Gabby mentioned, she started at the Hyatt in Cancun, which at the time, must be said, was also one of the best hotels in Cancun. Very nice, very modern, from a large industrial Mexican family. And from then on, I mean, opening up the Hyatt in Cologne, she was with the Kalach family in Mexico City with, please remind me the name of the hotel. Marquis Reforma. It just recently opened. I remember I was living there and it opened, and it was a beautiful, beautiful hotel. It still is, but was one of its kind back then. And she was also in Guadalajara. And what I always say when people ask me about my sister, I have not found anywhere something that proves it differently. But if she was not the first, she was one of the first in entire Mexico to be general manager in Mexico. And that was rightfully, like Gabi mentioned, the Meliá Hotel in Cozumel. And that's not, I mean, it's easily said, but my goodness, not easily done. And much less in the hospitality industry, and much less in Mexico. So that gives extra sense of being proud of having her as a sister. And that's why it makes perfect sense to start up these conversations, these interviews in English with her. So I guess having said that, the first question that I would have is, I'm interested in you helping us out to help out the younger girls that are still in school, that are about to get a job, to help us out, to help the young girls that have just graduated and are starting that career. And then, of course, we're going to go to the older ladies that already have some experience, but they're in a class of themselves. With those first few ladies studying and just recently graduated, what advice could you give them so that they have, I guess, a foot or half a foot ahead in this career race, especially being that you can give some advice from an international perspective, not just a female perspective, but you worked around the world. What would you tell them?
I think, and what I'm going to say is now, obviously, first from the hospitality industry aspect, because that's where I did, my whole professional experience. And again, what I'll say, this is not only for females, it goes for males and females, is the hospitality industry is service industry, and something I learned from the many years of working at it is you have to start from the ground up. If you don't know the basics, you have not experienced what it is to be somebody that's the housemaid, or obviously somebody that has the steward in the kitchen. If you don't know what it is to do that work, it is very, very difficult to obviously aspire and to be able to, as a leader, work with the people. I think it applies in other industries. I have not worked in them, so I cannot speak for those, but I do for the hospitality industry. And something that I experienced maybe in the last, it's become stronger in the last 15 years, 10 years, is, it's too many young people who basically, think that they have a right. I hope it's not taken back by someone.
Entitlement, we call it, yes.
Right. That because you have a career that you've studied and you've earned your degree after 4 hard years of studying, is that you're entitled to a management position. I don't think it works that way. So back to the question is what to do is humble, start from the bottom and understand and take some time to do the hard work. And I think that's going to give you such a good perspective on, in the short and long term. For some people, it takes longer, for others, shorter, but to become a true leader.
It's fascinating how, and our past interviews are proof of the pudding. It's fascinating how, talking with our guests, everything always comes back to oneself also. Gabi talks about humbleness. I'll be the first to accept that in the 90s when I joined Mercedes, the last thing that I had was humbleness. And that went throughout the years, and that probably affected my ability to be able to do more things, because it is nowadays at 53 years old, a lesson learned maybe 10, 15 years ago, that leadership has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with yourself. It has to do everything with the people that you lead. So Gabi, touching upon, we didn't have a previous talk or interview or nothing. We're just doing this out of scratch. There's no script. And I'm so happy that she touches on that point about humbleness and empathy and so forth, because yeah, that doesn't apply just to the hotel industry leadership. That's just worldwide. And it's nice to hear from someone else something that we're still working on, having learned a few years ago, but certainly it's the essence. Now, having said that, if you have your foot on the floor, on the ground, and you have empathy, and how do you continue to grow into an authoritative, or a leader that's effective? I shouldn't say authoritative, a leader that's effective, because as we all know, I mean, you join and perhaps the title gives you the leadership at the beginning, then the title wears away and you need to make sure that people like you, but after a while of liking you, you need to bring results. If you don't bring results, they stop liking you, and so forth and so on and so forth. So how do you develop your leadership skills, or how do you develop your I should choose this question carefully. How have you been successful at applying your leadership skills successfully? Because you have, evidently you have, in different venues, different countries, different teams.
Um, I think trying to summarize it is, being able to work with people and being able to, have an influence on them, but precisely not because the title gives it to you, but because of the way you work with people. I think in many industries, again, once in the hospitality industry, it's work by example. The way you work, I'm sure, and with the way you do it, if it creates a positive impression on people, they will follow. And I think that is pretty basic. Obviously, there's many abilities that you need to have to be able to work
Right.
with communication, empathy, all those come along. But I think if you're able to understand that it is working with the people, that's a big part of it.
I can literally feel my protocol and logistics assistant sitting off to my left, laughing and thinking, this is the point where we should really talk about global leadership resources and all we do. But no, we're going to talk about that at the end. All our 1,400 courses that we do around the world. But anyways, the other question that I had started asking is, I understand now how you apply it. What about those ladies or people? And let me actually, before I ask that question, I need to interject something. We did speak about something before we started, which was with Cecilia Carrillo, another outstanding. I mean, this lady is incredibly outstanding leader. We spoke about the fact that talking about gender differences isn't even something that should be talked about, or gender equality, because when you talk about gender inequality or equality, you're making do the fact that it exists when it's something that shouldn't exist, period. There should be equal pay regardless of the gender. There should be equal opportunity regardless of the gender. This is something we evidently support at Global, but while we keep talking about it, perhaps what we're trying to do here is to forget about talking about it, but how to fix it, right? How to fix it maybe from the inside, having a lady leader talk about her experience to teach other ladies and empower them, and having a gentleman leader and the other gentleman leaders that I have that believe in gender equality and breaking the glass ceiling help us transmit this message, and being sure that whoever we pick to talk about this subject are rightly so not the misogynists, not the people that want to keep individuals and ladies in particular down and not being able to grow. Having said that, I did mention at the beginning, Gabi, the ladies that have some years of experience. They grow sharper, they are more experienced, etc. But, and it's a big but, I presume that just like gentlemen, and perhaps just like it happened to me, at some point you start believing that you are pretty good, and you lose humbleness, that all important word at the beginning that you spoke about. I never really saw you lose humbleness ever. I mean, along your entire career. I know I did. It's a matter of fact, I know I did for a while. So what would you suggest to those ladies that are experienced and probably would have all the right to flaunt their experience? How would you suggest they develop further leadership and grow further?
It's an interesting question because I think it comes a lot with your character. I think it's tough. I mean, there's some personalities that are more into, I guess if you call it, the appearances and what the outer world thinks. There's others that are just as happy being in the background and not having to be that important. So I can't say that there's something. I think it's more of, you know, whether we believe that it's important to be humble, right? But I think the world will still have those that, you know, have that necessity to appear to be important. And I think in the end, it really is a matter of how comfortable we feel. And I think only going back a little bit on what you were also saying, with the question of whether we should or should not talk about the gender difference. You know? I think it's something we all would like, you know, for it to be that way. But along the fact that today, March 8th, you know, we have to think of, you know, reminding people of the importance of women is I guess, precisely a sign that, you know, things are not at the point where they should.
Very, very true. Very, very well said. And yeah, perhaps it makes me rethink. I mean, certainly what Ceci and I spoke about, and a lady from Leap here was also an issue of maybe not mentioning it, but perhaps mentioning it, but more importantly, mentioning what people or institutions that one knows are doing as best case practices or something, and maybe help them in that direction. If that is their company culture, for example, we can openly say nowadays that Siemens has launched a global initiative for inclusiveness, all sorts of inclusiveness, and we applaud that. That initiative at Global Leadership Resources ever since we initiated operating. And to this point, our team today is made up of, here locally, is made up of 4 women and 2 gentlemen. And I can tell you, we could not operate one bit without our 4 women here. But they're also, 3 of them are relatively young. 2 of them are very young. And it is very important for us here to try to help them learn those skills that they can use in the real world, which, as Gabi said, is not the world it should be. Yeah, just having to mention this whole thing proves that it's not where it should be. Although, Gabi, I would applaud. I mean, we're German, of German descent. Angela Merkel has done a wonderful job. The president, the prime minister in New Zealand has done an incredible job. Lagarde with the International Monetary Fund. I mean, there are slowly more and more women showing that they have that capacity. Are they being given the chance, or is there something special or different, you think, that they are doing, that they're able to access those leadership positions? Because from where I'm standing, where I'm sitting, I do not see enough companies interested in bridging that gender gap, and that's completely wrong. I mean, we're not for that. The world should be very, very different.
I think I think there's two answers right now to that question. The first is the fact that there are, you know, Angela Merkel and so many others is proof that women are capable. You know? I think that's more than clear. The second part now to what you say is it because a special condition, you know, that they brought along, or, you know, their experience with all? I think it's a fact, yes, they found their way through, if that's a way to say it. But they also found I'm going to hopefully say it in a correct way, infrastructure, the adequate infrastructure for them to succeed. To that, obviously, and you know, is for that to happen is you have to have people behind it that are open and they realize that that person that's there has the potential and the capacity to do it.
Should we infer that gender equality is then also industry dependent, that there are certain industries that are not as open to gender equality?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting.
I think, and I, as I mentioned at the beginning, is, you know, I will always speak from the hospitality industry, because that's where I obviously gained my experience, and I do have to say it's an industry that's that there could be a lot more, you know, general managers that you mentioned there. It has changed, I have to say, and I fully recognize that it has changed over the past probably same 15, 20 years that I mentioned. But I think there's still a lot of opportunities out there. And maybe one point that I saw over the years is, you know, and it's that point where, and I know sometimes it's difficult because, you know, men and women, we see things differently, but, you know, there's so many women in the hospitality industry that are, you know, they're working moms, and you know, trying to deal with a work environment where we'll say, you know, working in the hotel business or the travel business is a demanding work, you know, and many times it's not just the 8-hour office, you know, and it doesn't mean to make other jobs being less important. That's not the fact. That's the way the hotel business runs. So there's demands, you know, and I always saw that it's so difficult for these working moms to be able to meet up with the expectations of, you know, being at work, and many times it's 24/7, you know, it's and every day of the week. So I think that we have to think of creating also, you know, as I said, the infrastructure to make it easier for these moms, you know? And even though today we say, you know, with obviously the pandemic and everything that's come around, and many that might be working where the job allows to be able to say your home office, it's still not that easy, you know? And I think that's something very important to understand, that in that sense, you know, women and moms are different. You know?
You bring about an interesting point. I don't think there's a labor psychologist in the world that would refute or would be able to refute the fact that when it comes to multitasking, women are way, way ahead of any gentleman. Which, once we separate that thematic or talking about multitasking from a everyday kind of thing or interaction socially, whatever, it just stands to reason that one of the key requirements, not just soft skills, but actually hard skills that a leader needs, the higher he is or she is in the pyramid, is the ability to multitask. They, by nature, the higher that leader operates, requires more RAM. That RAM is imperative. So it would stand to reason, and it's been proven over and over again, that the higher the position, the more the strategic ability a woman has to umsetzen. I'm sorry, I'm thinking in German, to translate, to actuate, or to put the rubber on the road of the strategies. And I'm sure many of our male colleagues are going to be rolling around listening to this, but it's just the absolute truth. So Gavi mentioned the differences. Yeah, we think differently, but it's actually those differences that, when put together, can actually potentialize the working together and bring out results that wouldn't have been perhaps possible differently. As we once in a while often do, we're going to take a very, very short pause, and we'll be back with you instantaneously. And once again, herzlich bienvenidos and welcome. We're back. we took a small break because I did want to ask my sister in which direction perhaps we should take the next and last 10 minutes, because what we really want to accomplish through all these conversations and talks is how to share best practices and how to share advice to those people and individuals that we're actually trying to influence positively. And those evidently and unequivocally are young women who are either still studying or just recently entered the workplace. So having said that, I guess the first question I would re-ask, and we would be able to be a little bit more in depth about it, is in practical terms and practical advice and suggestions, how would you, Gabi, suggest or what would you recommend to those young ladies still in school and recently graduated with really bullets, in detailed bullets about what they can do to overcome what we have said and will continue to say is an unbalanced workplace, period?
Aside from something that I will keep saying for many, many years is understanding humbleness. I do think it's important. I think the hotel industry or hospitality industry provides, as do some others, but I think something that can only help you as you go along throughout your studies, but in preparing you for the tough world out there, and that is do as much as you can in basically your time assigned to being able to be in the workforce, but as practicante, the word doesn't come at this moment in English, but apprenticeship, correct. Do as much time as you can with that. Not only because the obviously format that you have requires you to complete a certain amount of hours. As I said at the beginning, the hospitality industry is based on, working from the bottom up and understanding many areas. So that would be obviously my biggest recommendation. And important is, take advantage of every hour that you have. And don't let it become more of a social activity as much as somewhere, or time that you can really prepare yourself. I always said, become a sponge, absorb as much as you can during that time, because in future it will help you. I always remember when I school at the University of Houston, and I remember asking one of my professors what benefit there was of studying with, it was cost management at that time, a lot of mathematics. I said, what's the sense of it? How am I going to apply this in the future? I mean, I can see myself working in the hotels, but what's the sense of it? At that time, it didn't make sense. Eventually, I understood, yes, books are an important part, and being in school is a very important part, but having that base and then working it makes a big difference. And then comes the part of, being a woman. That will also take some being prepared for. You will see, and that's why I say it's important to be able to already be in the business before you graduate, because it gives you a focus of, where to go towards the future, and you will understand a lot better the role that women have in the hospitality industry when you start at an earlier point in time than after you graduate.
I would presume that would be true in any industry. Very, very valuable to start beforehand in any industry.
And being, as a woman, it will give you an idea or a clear idea of maybe where you will be able to develop yourself better. And I think something that's very important, and my recommendation as a general manager, and something that I will say after having worked for many years, I understand I could have made different or have done different. It is trying to learn from every aspect of hotel business. I mean, many people you will always hear how they came from the sales area or they came from the rooms division area or F&B. I think a complete general manager is the manager that knows of everything, not to detail. That's why it's very important to be able to select and have a team that will work, with you, and they are the experts. You'll never be able to learn everything you need to from F&B. That's why you have a good F&B manager. But it is important to keep in mind you do need to know, some of the basics of the operation. And I see that's where the opportunity is, and that I have to be able to go more into depth in those areas. So and be open to always learn. And I think when we speak and the possibilities that you have, taking courses and improving your skills, that for me is pretty basic. And I think being already in the professional or in the workforce, try to take up as much opportunities that are provided for you to improve on your skills.
On a practical level, what advice would you give specifically? That's what we're here for. A woman who's confronted with a narcissist personality male boss that does not believe in future growth. What happens with that young lady that is hired by a company, regardless of the industry, and her first boss, or perhaps her third or fourth, but first time she confronts this situation in her own skin in the professional workforce, no longer a school teacher or a brother or a friend or whatever. This is in the professional. What advice would you give her?
Very tough one, and it exists.
Definitely.
I think what you really need is to work very, very well with your emotional intelligence, because that needs to help to guide you, to how far we'll be able to work under those conditions. There's some that have the capacity and will say, I can take it that far and be able to change it. And in all honesty, in some instances, it's a condition where you might have to say, I retreat and I have to work somewhere else.
And
It's
we'll give you
difficult.
our 2 cents worth. As a gentleman, same thing. Sometimes it's not even a female boss, it's the male boss that wants that bonsai complex, They want you nice, small, beautiful, keep watering you so you don't die, but they do not want you to grow at all. So certainly that emotional intelligence to say, I'm worth much more than this, comes in handy, and perhaps, it's time to let go and move on and go to better pastures. Of course, I'm going to joke for the second or third time during this interview. We would suggest you look for support groups and people that can help you through situations such as these. And evidently, our company is one of them. So look us up and talk about us. Specifically on this subject, to our 1,435 modules we have right now, we're adding another series of 15. We brought on board a psychologist who's going to be talking specifically about resilience and elasticity, and not just for women, but actually for all employees, especially now in these times of COVID-19 and how you lead through distance and through Zoom meetings, etc. And one of the benefits we saw of starting all this has to do with the conversation with Gabi today. It becomes more difficult for a misogynist or narcissist male leader to apply those characteristics to leadership when it's at distance. Distance makes it a lot easier for a new female employee to feel empowered because she's not in the presence of the person that does that. So we're going to be talking and teaching all those new professional young ladies how to use that to their advantage. Psychology works wonders in this direction. We were talking during our break also that perhaps most of these things we address are not things that have to do with male and female, but perhaps with values, with morals. There's good people and bad people, whether women or men. And Gavi started our conversation with something that I think we could go in the direction of ending it with also, and it's the word humbleness. Humbleness, understanding that the world does not revolve around you, understanding that feeling successful actually comes much easier when you are doing good to others, and then good to you comes as a collateral effect, ironically. Leadership and humbleness, as Gabi mentions, and not blaming others for your lack of advancement are keys to being leaders. So what happens, Gabi, with those people? And I think in the question, perhaps the answer is self-evident, but we'll see. What happens to those people that become leaders because they were appointed, or because the leader died, or because whatever, and they don't actually deserve that leadership role? What eventually ends up happening with those people?
I think in the end, it's basically that wherever they are at will not achieve goals that they've, basically set for themselves. I think it's very difficult.
Certainly, Darwin would set in and survival of the fittest, and sooner or later they just wander off into the sunset, not achieving their goals. But what I was trying to allude to is we really need to develop people and try to find that holy grail of people wanting to, if they're going to be leaders, having to earn it, not having that entitlement, especially within these young people today, because poor leaders can disseminate the future of their counterparts, their young people. If there's a leader and has a young person in their hands, it's just like school teachers. The kids spend 8 hours with their school teachers. Maybe nowadays not, right, because of COVID, but employees spend all workday with their leaders. So if those leaders do not positively influence their employees, moving on for that employee is going to be even more critical, because you can't move on really from maybe change schools, change classes, change teachers. But in the workplace, it's much more difficult. So having qualified leaders becomes even more important, right?
I mean, that's why I said, that not achieving the goals eventually must lead to that leader cannot be part of the team anymore.
Yeah.
In some places, it takes longer for maybe someone to take that step and remove the person. Other places, it's faster now, but I think eventually it's the moment.
So listen up, everybody. And we stand behind this fully. If you're a person in the position of leadership and you have headcount under you, you may have some rights as a leader, but you also have some responsibilities. And those key responsibilities are to develop those people under you positively and have them grow. And my gosh, if they grow and you don't, so be it. Let them grow and fly. Maybe one of them will grow and help you grow with them. Also, that also happens. They grow beyond you and then they help you and pull you up in future times. But I kid you not, if you're not a leader that has earned that leadership and is really looking for the best of their teams with that humbleness that Gabi talks about, maybe you should reconsider being a leader. It's just not correct morally, and ironically, business-wise, you would be surprised how positive teams and non-autocratic teams actually evolve and potentialize themselves even more than with a strong hand. And don't misinterpret me. I'm not saying here by doing these interviews with a female perspective of leadership that these ladies are not strong. They are 10 times stronger than most of us, and they can execute discipline and everything just as well. It's just the fact that many people, some men, some women, in order to be leaders, need to be able to have all sorts of soft skills and people skills, meaning the same, to earn that place. And if you're listening in and you're listening to my sister, to Gabi, and all these other people share their thoughts, whether you're young, whether you're old, if you're in a leadership position, you gotta immediately learn to be humble. And that's something that you can learn. So be humble and think about those people you're leading. I'm sure we're gonna have a talk. We're gonna go have lunch, my sister and I and her husband. And at some point in the future, maybe if she agrees to it, we'll have her back, and we'll talk a bit more about what we grew up and how my mom was also an example of leadership in her own right. But we hope that you take advantage of all these talks, and we're going to be growing them, not in the sense of importance of people that comes, that's not the point, but growing them in the diversity of people that come to talk to us about all these lessons. The ladies that are going to be joining us soon, like I said, are going to be from the diplomatic corps, the German diplomatic corps, honorary consuls, ladies in that position. We're going to have executives of experience worldwide. For example, the global human resources director, ex-global leadership, ex-human resources global director for Mattel. We will also hopefully have Tatiana Cloutier here. We're going to have regional business women. And ironically, we're also going to have two are right now on the docket, young ladies that come from very, very, very humble communities and have been able to break the mold, have been able to succeed, and are actually helping other ladies and ironically also other gentlemen to succeed in leadership and in life. So we hope you join us. These should be at least every month, but we hope to make it bi-monthly. Gabi, anything else you want to add or join to our conversation, or I should say enrich to our conversation? Any last thoughts?
No, again, I mean, I say thank you because I think this is a possibility for us. We have traveled a long way. We have a few years of experience behind us. And I always think that having heard from and having shared with people that have the experience behind them can really enrich what was, I mean, for me, over the many years in the business, made me stronger. And very on a personal note, obviously, you know, the fact my mom was, her personality and having had to also succeed after my dad passing away at a very young age, and you know, making ways meet for all of us to be able to have an education and being able to stand strong has made us today who we are. And I'm always thankful for that. I thank you. Well, thank you. the attention today.
It may sound very protocolary, but there's one thing I always say at the end of these interviews. I'll get to it. The other one is I won't mention who, but they are from the U.S. government diplomatic corps, and he sent his condolences for our mom's death. And I, in a whisk of whim of this hypomania that we've learned about when you joke in moments of death, I said that we now know literally what it feels like to be a bastard, and in the good sense of the word. And we remembered that movie called Glorious Bastards. So my sister, my two brothers, and I are in a very enviable and very delightful position of having lost both of our parents and having the honor to now continue to do things to make to continue to make their name be respected. I think we grew up in a very particular family where we can be proud of our parents, very, very proud of our parents. And like you mentioned, Mom too, her being able to, as we say in Spanish, sacarnos de todo. They educated us, they gave us education, everything. So I'm sure we're going to be keeping busy with that. And more than anything, it's especially nice and just a feeling that I don't have really words to describe it, but having Gabi here for this first interview. Zero planning, zero script, zero anything. As always, it was definitely worse than it could have been. But as always, it's much worse than it will be. We can promise you that. We keep learning through these interviews. Gabi, I always tell people in meetings and in interviews that time, as we learned with Mom, is the only irreplaceable asset that exists. Time cannot be replaced, and in the end, time is life. So when people come and talk with us here, or we have meetings at work or the concert or anywhere, we actually thank them for their time, but it's actually for their life that we're thanking, because the time we spend here that really does not come back at all, right? So the nice thing is, by doing these interviews is, yeah, you and I are giving up time of our lives for doing it, but I think perhaps if it helps one person out there, it'll have been worth it. No, and I'm pretty sure it might help others. So thanks again, sincerely. I love you, you know that.
Thank you.
And
Likewise.
and
Let's
we'll
honor their life.
let's do that. And I'll cut it short before I start crying, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.